you get this question: tell me about your leadership. You draw a blank. You can't think of anything. Does this sound familiar? This happens quite a lot. And oftentimes, you've got leadership or problem solving, all that in your background, but you can't think of stories around that. So today in this video, I'm going to show you a framework for how you can think about these stories to answer interview questions that you're going to get. You've got examples, I guarantee it, but you haven't thought about where those examples lie in your career. Today's video, we're going to talk about that and give you 9 ways to think about the stories that will impress the interviewer. Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach, and I want you to thrive and not just survive your job. People tend to make 2 major mistakes when it comes to the stories that they're going to tell. One is that they prepare at the last minute for an interview. Now, you do not have to wait until you get the email or message that they want to talk with you. You should start preparing when you start your job search, thinking about how you're going to answer common interview questions. The second thing that happens is that oftentimes people do not feel their experience, what they've encountered, is worthy of talking about. And that's just not true. I've coached many job seekers on interview prep. And it does happen that some of the stories that you think, oh, that's no big deal, actually are going to demonstrate well that you can do what that job needs. But you have to be able to tell the story. So we're going to go over 9 different ways you can think about your knowledge, your skills, your expertise, so that when it comes to an interview, you're going to be able to wow them. If you like this content, I always appreciate hitting that like button and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It really helps. The first framework to think about stories that will impress your interviewer is what I call the complaint method. Now, it's not about complaining. There may have been a lot of that in your career, but it's to think about the things you were complaining about. So that could have been a coworker, or it could have been a project that wasn't working, or a process that was falling apart. Now, what you want to think about is what you did as a result of feeling that things weren't working. Now, this can be what you've done solo or what you did as a team. And it can even be that it didn't 100% resolve the problem, but it did make it better. So think about the conversation you had with a coworker that made your relationship better. Or maybe the workaround you did on a project that made it work in the end. Or a process that you figured out what was not working and you fixed. Those can be gold for stories about problem solving, relationship management, you name it. The second technique is what I call timeline excavation. So what you want to do is look at your most recent jobs, and it could be, if you've been in a company a while, the different roles you've had. And look at when you started that role and when you finished that role. So what was it like when you started? And what was it like when you finished? That can be your growth. It can be how you actually improved your performance, had better relations with your staff. It could be projects that you completed. Those areas of growth can be a great story to talk about when it comes to answering about what you have done that made a difference or how you have solved problems. So use that method to come up with some of your stories. Another way to uncover your stories is what I call the crisis method. So sometimes in your career, you have faced a crisis. It could be that someone on your team quit when a project was due. It could be that you had an IT problem that really impacted the organization. It could be that you had a client issue. Your client was really upset and maybe they were going to pull their business from your organization, and you had to figure out quickly what to do. So, those are often really great examples of problem solving. And it could be that, you had to do a workaround, or you had to go to the client and have a meeting and figure out what else you could do to make the client happy. Or everybody had to, do extra work to get the project done, and you were the person that rallied the troops, so to speak, to get that done. These can be great examples of problem solving and many other types of skills. So use that as a basis to think about how you've made an impact on the business. Another framework to think about is what I call the intern test. And that would be pretending that you were going to teach somebody about the job. You have a new intern, they don't know anything about the role, and you're there to mentor them. And what you want to do is make them successful. So, what you're going to do is impart your wisdom. What are some lessons learned through working in that organization or with that boss or in that role? Those situations can be great for stories because they're true to you and you want authenticity. So, thinking about what you learned, how you learned it, and how you've used that in, kind of your growth can be a great story to tell in an interview. The framework I'm going to talk about is scale relativity. Now, I started this video with talking about a question about leadership. And I know some of you might have gone, well, I don't have leadership in my job. I'm pretty low level. But there can be leadership at all levels, entry level, mid management, senior management. Just because what you do is what you consider small does not mean that's not leadership. So let's say you're a retail sales associate and you reorganize the stockroom because you figured out a way to make that more efficient. That's leadership. You're a receptionist and you figured out a new check-in procedure that made things much easier for your guest. That's leadership. You're a junior analyst and you figured out that there was an error that was going to cause issues in a report. That is leadership. So think about those things when it comes to leadership, because doesn't matter where you are in the corporate ladder, you can show leadership, and your future employer wants to know about that. Another framework to think about is, would I do it again? So think about the decisions you've made, the projects you've done, and think, would I do it exactly the same way again? Why that is important is because that showed it worked, you had good judgment, you had confidence. There is a story. So go through your background, go through your experiences, and think of major things or even minor things that you would go, yeah, if I had to do that over again, I'd do it exactly the same way. There's a story to tell, and figure out that story, because that could be gold in an interview. Another framework you can use is follow your emotions. So think about a time when you felt proud of an accomplishment, or you felt relief that you problem solved something that was challenging, or even that you were nervous before doing something. Maybe you were feeling pride because you finished a project that the person before you couldn't do. Or you felt relieved because you had that difficult conversation with a coworker and it ended up being a good conversation. Or you were nervous before presenting to senior leadership, but you got a lot of good feedback. Those emotions mean it was something important to you. Dig deep and figure out when you felt those emotions. There may be stories behind that. Another framework you can use is something called the before and after snapshot. So we previously talked about before and after in a job, but it can be even smaller than that. So what happened before? And what did you do to improve or change something? Maybe you put in a new process because you thought that would be better for your clients. Maybe you improved team morale because you dealt with some friction in the team. It was a challenging conversation to have, but you did it and it resulted in a better work environment for all. Or maybe you thought of an idea for a new service and you presented that to management and they approved that, and then you were able to sell that service. Think about those before and afters because that can demonstrate new knowledge, new skills, and great experience that a future employer would want to know about. The last framework I'm going to talk about is the other people angle. And what do I mean by that? This is external information you've gotten about your performance. So this is the people that come to you for help, could be the people that have thanked you, or the people that seek you out who want to work with you. They're doing that for a reason. It's because you have knowledge that they need, you're helpful. It could be that you went out of your way to do something for somebody else and they're thankful for that. Or a client sees you as the person that can solve their problems and they want to work with you. Dig deeper into why people come to you. There are stories there if you spend the time to think about them. And those are good stories because they show external validation that you are doing a good job. Now that you have these 9 frameworks, I want you to pick 3 of these, and then I want you to spend 10 minutes on each one coming up with your stories. Now, they do not have to be perfect and polished. We just want the raw materials here. You'll have plenty of time to figure out exactly how you want to use them in an interview and what you want to say later as you're preparing for that interview. But what you want to do is think about all the stories. And when you do this exercise, you're going to come up with a lot of stories. I guarantee that. The thing about it is, these stories are about your everyday work life. It's not necessarily that you're doing something really important like saving the company from bankruptcy or something like that. It is the things that you do in your everyday work life that show the kind of person you are and how you think about work and the choices you make and how you behave. That is what the interviewer is wanting to know, and that is what they care about. So even the littlest thing, which you might think is no big deal, may be very important for you to tell your story in an interview so that that interviewer thinks that you have value within their organization because they can understand what you can accomplish. So, now that you know how to do this, don't tell me you don't have any stories, because I don't believe it. Everybody has stories. You just need to spend the time to think about the stories you have, collect all of them, think about how they apply to different questions you might get asked in an interview. And if you do that, I guarantee you, you will not go blank when you're asked a question. You will have a story to tell, and it will be a good one. I help many job seekers prepare for their interviews. So if that's of interest to you, I'll give you some more information in the description, and I can help you prepare for your next interview.